This week, one thing that happened in church news is that Pope Francis decided to add to the Roman Martyrology, that is the Catholic Church's formal list of martyrs. He added to the Roman Martyrology the 21 Coptic Christians martyrs of Libya. Now, that may not sound significant at first, because we have plenty of lists of those groups of people who were martyred throughout the centuries, and sounds like another thing from ancient times. Except that these 21 martyrs of Libya didn't live in ancient times, but lived in our own lifetimes. Some of you may remember in 2015, about 8 years ago, a group of ISIS terrorists captured 21 men in Libya and executed them because of their belief in Jesus Christ. They asked them to renounce Jesus, and they refused and were killed for their faith. And what really shook the world is not only did people hear about this on the news, but the terrorists specifically took a video of it. And this horrific event was published online for the world to see. But what it also reminds us of is people who are willing to give their lives for faith in Jesus Christ, here and now in our modern lifetimes, in our modern world. And so for us, it's a reminder of the call not only to be willing to die for Jesus Christ, but also to be willing to live for him. Especially, it more and more seems to me that we live in a culture and a society, here in America at least, that seems to presume that God does not exist. Or if God does exist, well, it doesn't really matter or have effect in one's life, that it's unimportant, that you can just make up and live however you want. And it also seems that the world's a miserable mess. And so for all of us, especially for you graduates, as we're about to go out into the world, as you're about to start the next stage of your life, you are baptized and confirmed believers. In our first reading today, we hear about the sacrament of confirmation, the apostles laying hands for the Holy Spirit to be poured out in a new way. And for you graduates, and for all of us, we may say that we believe in God and that he's real, but does that actually mean we live any different in the world? Does that have any bearing on the trajectory of our life? Is weekly Mass and daily prayer going to be a part of my life? Am I going to strive to cultivate virtue and morals in my life? And when I've screwed up, to avail myself of God's mercy by confessing my sins? Is worship of God, the teachings of Jesus Christ, and seeking God's will actually going to be part of the driving force of your life? As the things that shapes and gives direction to your life along with everything else? Or might we fall into the temptation to simply say we believe in God and yet live no differently? Just live like everyone else, as if it doesn't matter. It's good to be reminded of who God is and who we are. That you were once nothing, literally. There was a time when you literally did not exist. And yet you were called forth into the world to be something, into existence, to have life, which in and of itself is a profound gift. But even more than that, that the Creator God didn't stop there in simply calling us forth into existence, that he calls us forth into existence from nothing to become something, and to be something immortal and divine. to be ones that carry the divine spark of God into the world, that he pours himself out his love, that he calls us to share in his work. You, to be a force of goodness, of divine love, to be a light in the darkness of the world. And that's what you're called to. It's what all of us are called to by God. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. The temptation is always to take the easy and the more comfortable path. I've shared before in previous homilies, and I'll probably say again, I know for myself that I'm inclined towards comforts. I'm very much a creature of comforts. And yet, I am continually chagrined that when Jesus calls us, he didn't say, take up your comfortable snuggie and come and follow me. He says, take up your cross. Jesus says there will be suffering, that sometimes doing what is truly right and good, living in the spirit of truth as Jesus calls us to, is sometimes hard and involves suffering and sacrifice. But as Pope Benedict once said, the world promises you comfort, but you were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness. The world promises you comfort, but you were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness. And so it's not easy to live for Christ, especially in a world that seems more and more apathetic, mocking of, even hostile towards our Christian faith. And yet, if you truly embrace all that God is calling you to, genuinely strive to seek his will in your life, that God has great things in store for you to make you into a force of goodness, a force of divine love that takes courage and strength, and a light in the darkness. Those 21 Coptic martyrs I mentioned, they were not highly educated theologians. They weren't priests. They weren't monks. They were ordinary people. Ordinary or seemingly ordinary people. Day-to-day construction workers, farmers, laborers, peasants who didn't have a lot of education. And yet, in seeking to do God's will, these seemingly insignificant ordinary men became blazing lights to the world by their witness, now shining with the great glory in heaven. They didn't expect it, but in their day-to-day yes, in the seemingly ordinary of their life, their day-to-day yes in Jesus Christ gave them strength and courage in that moment to then become profound witnesses, to die heroically with courage and strength. They didn't choose the easy path, the comfortable path of life, but chose the path of Jesus Christ day to day. That literally cost them everything, but yet now their memory is honored and they live in the glory of heaven. And also that these ordinary men, that it was said that the first 20 who were martyred were all Christians, asked to renounce their faith in Jesus. They refused, and they were praying as they were killed. And the final one, the 21st one, they weren't sure if he was a Christian or not, so they were just going to let him go, the terrorists were. But then he said, after seeing their heroic and courageous witness, he said, their God is my God. That's the God I want to live for. That's the God I'm willing to die for. For us, that's how we're to live in following God. Like the Coptic martyrs ourselves, to live for God in such a way that we become that shining light, that when others see the way we live, that when others see the ways we strive to love God and through him then to love our neighbor, that others can look and say, that's what I want, that their God is my God. Amen.